Alright, The Rift Part 2. Part 1 of this book was probably the strongest entry I think I've seen. But if we average out all the parts of these comics so far, I think Part 2s are definitely the weakest editions of the lot. So let's see if The Rift can break the trend and keep us on course for a solid book the whole way through. Alright, so where did we leave off? Oh, the whole estranged father and daughter thing. What a fun note to start on. It turns out Lau has told his business associates that he doesn't have a family and sticks to his guns here, confidently announcing that Toph is not his daughter, which the whole gang takes offense to. Ignoring this entirely, Satoru's uncle takes to shouting at Satoru over the factory not being up and running despite the earthquake that just happened and everyone evacuating and machinery being damaged. He seems like your classic yelly, screamy, irredeemable businessman at the moment, saying that he can have all the benders replaced within the hour. It also serves to draw a parallel here in this panel between Toph and Satoru, as both of their father figures seem unreasonable, distant, and uncaring. Toph's dad is really committing to the bit here. He tells Colonel Monkey, the leader of the Rough Rhinos, to get rid of Toph and her friends, and even implies he doesn't need to be gentle about it if he doesn't want to. Aang and Toph both say, screw that, I'm not leaving until I get this refinery moved, and I'm not leaving until I talk to my dad. So the Rough Rhinos gleefully say they'll do it the hard way, which is weird because the last time they had a run-in with a gang, they got destroyed, and that was before Aang could earthbend or firebend, and Toph wasn't even around. The betting spread for this matchup paints a pretty horrible picture for them. You'll also probably notice the team looks a little bit different. Colonel Monkey is still here, of course, and you've got this guy that uses the ball and chain and the explosives expert, but we don't see Kashi, who was the polearm guy, or Vachir, who you guys told me is the Yuyan archer that is in the Rough Rhinos. And after checking the wiki briefly to avoid spoilers, turns out you're right. I don't know where or when that's ever stated, maybe in this comic, but yeah, this Yuyan archer is the same guy Ozai hired to go kill Ikem last book. Weird. Anyway, we have new additions to the Rough Rhino roster too, including this guy who looks like a Fire Nation version of this pirate. This guy over here, who I guess is the hammer guy. I've noticed this fact through subtle context clues and intense scrutiny of both the writing and art, and the glue that keeps any team together, the stick guy. Sokka seems unsure of the situation, despite the reality I laid out a minute ago of the Rough Rhinos clearly being no match. Not to mention Katara is way crazier at waterbending now, and she's here too. So we get a surprisingly early action scene here, and if the gang is even slightly winded after this encounter, I will be stunned. Aang and Toph do a cool team attack here that amounts to everyone just being knocked over, so that's a good start. Stick guy makes a beeline for Aang, maybe wanting to assert his dominance as best stick user. But no, it turns out he's pissed at Aang for toppling Ozai and making him lose his military job, which led him to join the Rough Rhinos. Aang rocks his hands up real good to make sure Utor, his name is Utor by the way, won't lose his stick. Very nice of him. You can tell that move comes from a place of experience. Then he tells him that the Rough Rhinos are a bunch of mean people, which I guess he doesn't think Utor was privy to that information. Anyway, Toph is nearly killed. Toph very understandably launches this guy 50 feet into the air, and Aang gently catches him, slow falling him back to the ground with grace. I'm sure your good friend Sokka would have appreciated this same treatment once upon a time, Aang, but it's whatever. Aang scolds Toph and then is nearly gutted by the guy he just saved, but then does the classic you don't get to play anymore earthbending move. Aang continues to scold Toph despite being nearly gored by that guy's knife, to which Toph has an actually pretty funny line, saying chill out, he would have landed in a bush somewhere or something, but then if you look at the art, the only thing anywhere near them are houses, metal containers, the rocks in those metal containers, and the ground. Aang tries to go all guru therapist on her here, talking about her dad, and Toph's just not in the mood for it, man. We cut to Sokka fighting Monkey, and Sokka lands what honestly should be a killing blow. Bonk. What do you mean bonk? This thing is sharp. That was an overhead two-arm jumping slam. This thing should be in your heart. But no, Monkey's so tough it just doesn't affect him, I guess. I guess this chest piece could be really, really good armor, but even still, an attack like that would probably pierce the light armor a firebender would have to wear to still be mobile. He can just tank a hit like that? Alright, man, I guess. Sokka is also blown away by this and turns tail and books it. Like, what the hell? This guy's immune to conventional weapons. Cut to Katara. She seems to be handling this 2v1 pretty well, but Sokka grabs her and tells her to come with him. He's got a plan. This new hammer guy even lets fly a primitive ice savage line, so you really know he's an asshole villain type. Sokka takes a plate of Aang's book here and makes the Rough Rhinos charge him all at once and then jumps out of the way and they bonk their heads. This one's less bad because he dodged charging rhinos rather than people at least. Anyway, the plan was to destroy the fencing to get into the polluted hell area so Katara can commit chemical warfare against these poor bastards. And she takes to it with gusto. Classic Katara, honestly.
I find violence to come pretty easy to me, actually.
Cut to the air acolytes and the ball and chain guy. A lot of fights going on, actually. This one turns out to be man versus child with no forklift experience. And the betting spread on that matchup, honestly, it's all over the place. Hard to call that one. The girls stop the kid, though, saying that horribly maiming people with construction equipment, that's not very air nomad, is it? The kid is kind of bummed about it, so I'm honestly starting to like him. Ball and chain takes advantage of the situation and incapacitates the 3 acolytes over the course of 2 panels. That's a 1.5 air acolyte to panel ratio. That's very impressive. Journeyman numbers. Ball and chain's weapons get up and attack him out of nowhere, though, and on the next page, Toph says, you brought a gun to a gun-bending fight? You're so fucking simple. Toph's turn to scold somebody now. now, and it's the air acolytes. She says Glasses could have taken care of the situation with the forklift, but no, you're going off these backward-ass principles thought up by dead men from centuries ago. Toph again drives home the fact that worrying about the past is useless if you don't see the situation that's happening right in front of your face right now. And I agree with her on some level, on a lot of levels actually, but when it comes to it being a cultural thing, you gotta be more aware of that, but Toph doesn't care at this point. Not that she really cared much in the first place. As if to rub Toph's face in at this time, the air acolytes are unswayed, telling Aang that they want to continue the Yangchen Festival celebration despite everything that's happened over the day. This has to be frustrating for Toph. It seems like these random people have chosen Aang as family, while her actual flesh and blood father has cast her away entirely. Aang thinks that's a great idea. I guess the fight is over now, even though we never really tied up that Katara and Sokka fight. Maybe they need help, Aang? No? Just gonna walk off and go eat? Okay, I guess. He invites Toph to come along too, trying to calm things down between them, and Toph graciously accepts. I'm kidding, of course. Toph storms off. Smash cut to Satoru. He's working the benders way harder now that Toph smashed up his machinery last episode. Don't worry, benders. I'm sure upper management will see how hard you're working and reward you with a promotion or higher pay or other benefits. That's how it works, right? Right? Toph busts in with her classic let's break some rules maneuver and says, I'm talking to my dad, where is he? Aang and the acolytes are gonna have their meal under this tree Aang used to sit under with Gyatso, never mind. Yeah, there seems to be some sort of vegetarian restaurant nearby, mostly cabbage-based, weirdly. They head inside and meet this guy who runs the joint, who's really into cabbage, I guess. He's very surprised to see Aang for some reason. He says Aang is always destroying his cabbages whenever he's around, and I've got a pretty encyclopedic knowledge of the show, and I have no idea what this guy's talking about. Even Aang seems to be confused at what he's talking about. But this strange cabbage vendor person relents and says that they can eat their festival meal in his establishment. So they do, and I like that Jingbo, his name is Jingbo by the way, has been lugging around this giant backpack filled with picnic stuff the whole story. So them having this stuff checks out. Back with Toph again, still en route to her dad, Satoru catches up with her and they have a little chat about his uncle. Toph says there's a difference between respecting his uncle and being a spineless kiss-up. Satoru kind of snaps at her and says that when he needed him, his uncle was there for him, something that Toph has never had herself. So even though they're in similar situations and very stressed relationships with their father figures, they look at the problem very differently. Satoru will take the heat because his uncle is family that was there for him, and Toph refused her family entirely because they were never there for her. Well, moment of truth here, says Toph. This moment almost calls back to the Zuko seeing Ozai again scene. Toph pauses at the door for a moment to compose herself before entering his office, and finally sees her father again after probably roughly the same amount of time that Zuko didn't see his dad. Alright, now we're back with Katara and Sokka, a lot of different stuff going on in this one. Katara dispatched the remaining rough rhinos in short order, it turns out, and Sokka takes the moment to stunt on them, of course. He's chatting shit to Ye Lu, this guy's name is Ye Lu, by the way, about how he was trying to blow them up with this explosive that's fuse is still lit, before he got frozen. Not 10 minutes ago? How long have they been frozen? How long was the fuse on this stick of dynamite? 10 minutes? Well, not 10 minutes, so 9 minutes? 5 minutes? 1 minute seems kinda long. Ah, well, Sokka's just joking around anyway. He'll put it out. Maybe. He thinks. Nope, never mind. So this gag actually leads to Sokka accidentally opening a secret passage. This kind of writing seems pretty clunky to me. Whoops, Sokka has a goofball moment and didn't put the dynamite out in time, and then he threw it in this exact area to reveal the next plot point. It's like another Scooby-Doo moment almost. Getting really jumpy now, we're only getting about 3 pages for each section of the gang at a time, but I feel unlike how it was in The Promise, these pages are actually moving each plot line forward pretty substantially, so it works better. Back with Aang and the acolytes, Aang is so airbender cultured out of his mind right now, he seemingly has a meditative spiritual episode without even meaning to. Man, that's gotta be some good food. Suddenly he's having a meal with Yang Chen, who can speak this time. Whoa. Yang Chen explains that when Aang broke his connection with Roku, he severely weakened his connection with all the avatars preceding Roku, so every other avatar. Aang's like, fuck. But spiritual and cultural events and traditions can be used as a way to re-strengthen the bond with the past avatars temporarily. Also, it's weird that Aang is appearing as this ghostly form in the actual spirit world, right? This also happened in The Search, and I meant to bring it up, but I guess I forgot. He looked like this in the physical world while his spirit and body were disconnected, and while he was visiting flashbacks of Roku, but whenever he was actually in the spirit world as a spirit, he just looked normal. When he communed with Roku in The Promise, he always seemed to enter some void or something where they were both ethereal, but here, Aang seems to be at a destination, and if the cut down trees are anything to go off of, it's probably the spirit world's equivalent to where he is physically right now. This, combined with Yang Chen showing up seemingly in the flesh in the physical world, leads me to conclude I do not have a solid handle on how any of this works anymore. The acolytes are very excited to see Aang like this, and the cabbage vendor is for some reason very alarmed. What, has he seen Aang like this before? Because I don't think he would have, considering I personally have never seen this man before this panel in my life. Alright, we got a massive 4 pages of Aang, so now we need need 3 pages of Toph, Lau continues to enforce the idea that Toph is not his daughter after covertly sliding a family picture under some papers. Lau berates Toph, saying that he spent countless hours and dollars to make Toph into the lovely socialite girl of her status should be. So this rough and tumble, take shit from no one girl in front of him can't be his daughter. Like fully, properly disowned status here. Toph surprisingly says she knows she's not totally in the right here, which isn't very Toph at all. But it's her dad she's talking to here. This is probably the only person on the planet who she would see her own faults through. But still, she does stand her ground a bit. Lau takes this crack in the armor as an opportunity to enforce his rule over Toph again. Just like the good old days. This is exactly what Toph was dreading. Nothing has changed. Oh, sorry, no, it's only 2 pages for Toph. Now it's back to Katara and Sokka. Once again, I don't mind so much. They are doing a lot with these pages. Katara and Sokka find the passage that Sokka blew open leads to a secret mine. Neat. Turns out that this mine is the source of the river's pollution, meaning that Satoru's uncle knows that it's not a natural phenomenon. And it also implies that the uncle is keeping secrets as large as an entire operating mine away from Satoru. And oh hey, the other rough rhinos are here. Kachi and apparently Vachir. Time to get down to business. Sokka with honestly a beautiful slip and towner.
A Yuyan can pin a flight from 100 Yuyans away without a flight killing 100 Yuyans.
Katara says, alright, chill out guys, this place is unstable, and clearly also the source of the earthquakes. So Vachir's neutralized immediately, and Sokka instantly takes up the leadership role of getting everyone out of the unstable mine. No one takes to it though, everyone just stands there staring at him. Nutha, one of the girls from the Southern Water Tribe from last issue, tells Katara and Sokka they're lucky they found work here, they're not leaving. I guess the right to refuse unsafe work isn't a thing in the Avatar universe yet. She also lets slip the fact that the Southern Water Tribe hasn't been doing very well since the end of the war, and she has a healthy amount of resentment for Katara taking off of the Avatar and never going back home. Weird though, Pakku said he was taking some Northerners to help rebuild the South at the end of Book 1, so you would think the South would be doing a lot better if anything, right? Nutha continues to go in on Katara, saying, oh yeah, the whole world needs you now, right? Not just the Southern Water Tribe, to which Katara could very reasonably be like, yeah, kinda. Neok says they work until Boss Man Lau tells them to stop, so Sokka, taking a moment to think and then deciding that he is a genius, will simply go tell Boss Man Lau to tell them to stop. Aang tries to explain to Yang Chen that Roku was out of touch. His advice was meant for a world that doesn't exist anymore. He starts, it was like he wanted me to hold on too tightly to the past. Yang Chen finishes for him. Aang says, yes, exactly, and immediately realizes, oh, you got me. You boomed me. But Yang Chen has bigger fish to fry here. Disconnecting from Roku was a mistake, because Aang's past lives are meant to guide him away from mistakes they themselves made. And Yang Chen has to talk about one she made that Aang cannot be allowed to repeat. Oh shit, Yang Chen flashback. Bet you didn't see that coming. So we join the Avatar from the past on her first Avatar mission, leading her to the very place that Aang is right now, but centuries ago. Except there isn't a town here, or even a meadow. It's the, quote, grandest city on the planet at the moment. I don't think she exactly means largest city by that, considering this is a pretty small island, and Ba Sing Se is pretty big and also pretty old. Also, we learn that Yang Chen has already mastered the elements at this point, and since we know that it's customary to tell the Avatar their identity at the age of 16, that'd probably put her in her early 20s here. So Yang Chen has been summoned here because the king of the city has been informed by his prophets that some horrible disaster will come from the sea, and he's hoping Yang Chen, as the Avatar, can help divert it. Also, the prophets here are dressed basically identically to Aunt Wu. They've got the candles on the floor and the little fire, and even the bones to do the bone readings. The rocky gorilla shogun from last chapter emerges from the sea, and somehow Yang Chen can feel an immense amount of pain radiating from it. It feels like grief. The spirit makes a beeline for the city, and when Yang Chen tries to speak to it, well, it doesn't go so hot. The spirit takes to hay-buying the city immediately, and Yang Chen's master tells her to get up and beat that thing's ass. Oh, I was actually interested in that, but no, we're back with Toph. I would do the tennis meme, but we need it to be four-way tennis somehow. Toph tries to reason with her dad that even though she's not the lovely little princess that he wanted as a daughter, she still turned out pretty great. She's the best earthbender on the planet. She helped end a war. She invented a new kind of bending. Isn't that kind of cool at least? Something you can be proud of, maybe? Dad says, guess not. Man, screw this guy, honestly. All my homies hate Lau. This is probably the saddest we've ever seen Toph. This is a tough one. But no time to dwell on it, even though I think it would be good for the book to have Toph confront these feelings more bluntly, because Sokka shows up and says, you gotta get those workers out of that iron mine, because that place is ready to buckle at any moment. But Lau is confused. He doesn't run an iron mine. They only mine the crystals. I'll fucking show you, says Sokka. Back to Yang Chen's story now. Her and that spirit had a tilt for the history books. They fought all night and wiped that city off the map. Yang Chen finally gets a word in, and I guess the spirit decides after hours of fighting, he could have a little intermission for a chat. He introduces himself as General Old Iron. Ooh, pretty. The art style changes big time to this more traditional Eastern style for the General Old Iron flashback within Yang Chen's flashback. Old Iron explains that he was the bodyguard to this beautiful spirit named Lady Tianhai, who was sort of like a general beauty, nature spirit. One day humans settled on the land she looked after, and while she loved the idea, Old Iron knew what humans did to their environment, and apparently back then, most spirits spirits saw humans as a direct threat to their existence, so he was going to kill them to protect his ward, but she stopped him and told him to kick rocks, so he did. And that settlement grew into the city that he and Yang Chen's fight just flattened. Old Iron said just a few days ago he felt Lady Tianhai take her last breath and accuses the humans of killing her. That's why he's here to lay waste to the city. The time he feared had arrived, a time where humans run the show and there are no place for spirits. Kinda like the advancement Aang is worried about, and how Aang is afraid that his ways will be forgotten. Wonder if that'll come back. The king of the city says that yes, the death of Lady Tianhai was his fault, but it's pretty vague about it. He must know we're only in part 2 of 3 here. Old Iron suits up again and says, "Get out of my way, Yang Chen. I'm dummying these bastards like I should have done all that time ago." Alright, well at least some of the storylines have collided now. Back in the unstable mine, Lao is stunned to see this entire part of his operation that he didn't even know existed. He says that he and Loban had agreed that this area was too dangerous. Enter Loban. His name is Loban, by the way. And he says, "Yeah, you didn't want to do this part because you're a punk bitch, so I did it on my own." Toph interjects and says, "Yeah, no, this is super messed up. This place is just waiting to drop. I can feel the whole mine shifting around us. I can't believe you have people working in here." Lao isn't a cartoon villain, I guess. He just doesn't like Toph, so he orders his workers out of the mine. The cartoon villain, Loban, says, "What, are you crazy?" But Kachi and Vachir show back up. Guess they're not done, and Kachi does one of the signature polearm tactics and launches it like a javelin at Sokka. Of course, this splits the most important load-bearing beam of all, and oh, that ain't good. Back to the Yang Chen flashback. As Old Iron took to attacking the people, Yang Chen finally decided, alright, it's fucking go time. She enters Aang's force of nature sphere, and I don't know, I kinda like that it was Aang's thing, you know? I mean, sure, past avatars probably did it makes sense, but it's so iconic in the finale to the show. Honestly, I didn't even much care for it when Aang did it in The Promise, even though in my mind it is his technique and look. In the finale, it was like, okay, Aang did this to fight the Comet-enhanced Fire Lord. It was like peak Aang summoned the epitome of his strength to duel the greatest villain of the show. Like, it felt warranted. But in The Promise, Aang does it to basically go yell at Zuko. Here, at least it's warranted more, like Yang Chen's been fighting this guy for hours. I don't know, I just can't be pleased, I guess. I just thought it would be cooler if it was a one-time thing. Anyway, Yang Chen implores that Old Iron lay down his armor, that peace is possible. It's her job. She's the great bridge between man and spirit, a bridge that is there so that a rift never grows between them. Aha, the rift, they've done it. Like with the best episode titles in the show, the title The Rift has multiple meanings. Of course, this rift between man and spirits that Yang Chen is talking about, but also the rift Aang feels between where he is now and his people and his past. And of course, the rift between Toph and her father. Yang Chen says that they came to an agreement, and as long as that agreement was upheld, Old Iron would accept peace. So Yang Chen made it a ritual for her people, Yang Chen's festival. But with the 100-Year War, the agreement and ritual hasn't been upheld for a very long time. Easy, says Aang, we'll just start upholding the agreement again. What do we do? But Aang and Yang Chen feel an earthquake that is happening in the physical world. Which I get for Aang, like he's in 2 places at once right now, but Yang Chen, who is only on the spiritual plane right now, felt it too. That must be a hell of an earthquake. Aang snaps back to reality and says, we gotta get on our horse here and help people. But this guy's vegetables fall over? I don't know who this guy is. Why is he here? Why does he get a line? Aang meets up with Sokka, who managed to get out of the mine as the earthquake was happening, it seems. But he tells Aang, Katara, and Toph, and a bunch of other people are still down there, and I mean, hopefully not crushed. It seems a little weird to me that Sokka made a topside without Katara. Like, I feel Sokka would have ensured her safety before his own, but heat of the moment, I guess, you know. Aang's like, oh, fucking get him out, watch this, but he hears Katara yelling at him through the ground? Really? How shallow into the earth was this mine? How loud can Katara yell? She says, do not earthbend right now, you're making it even more unstable down here, and there's a bunch of iron ore between us anyway, that I'm yelling at you through, somehow. And the only reason we're alive is because Toph is down here shoulder pressing an entire mine. It's looking, to be honest, not good. And that is where we close it off for the Rift Part 2. Out of the Part 2s, I gotta say, this is the best. Despite jumping around a lot, which I didn't like in The Promise, this comic always finds a way to make the short bursts with each different group of characters count. Like, the part of their story was always moved along in the few pages they got. It always felt important when we rejoined a different character. The story overall, you know, it's the middle part. You don't get the intrigue of starting the story or the satisfaction of closing it out, but everything felt paced appropriately. Toph and her dad only had a few pages to their conversation, but honestly, it was more than I thought it was going to get. And you know, I complained last issue about certain characters not getting a lot to do, but here we have pretty much everyone having their own little contained series of events. And I'm still over here whinging, while being understanding as I can, but whinging all the same about the comic jumping around from situation to situation. Every character getting something to do. At some point, I gotta just nod my head and say, yeah, they're doing pretty good with the medium this story is told in, and I think they are. This story is very interesting so far from both a character perspective and a story perspective, and I think it's been very well executed in Part 2 as well. Well, let's see if they can go 3 for 3 next time. Patreon shoutouts, if you want to see 2 brand new videos from me, you can support me on Patreon for just a few bucks. Link, as always, is in the description below the video. Biggest shoutouts of all go to my top patrons, Agent Rhino, who single-handedly protects 20 hectares of rainforest by pretending to be an all-powerful tree spirit. spirit, and they do it so well it just might be true. Danger Stranger, who came third at the Fencing World Championship only using a butter knife. Omega Fighter, who got a cannonball shot through their torso but just put an ice pack on it and was back to work the next day. They work in a cannon-related field. Sean Martin, who bowled a perfect game with one hand while throwing a perfect game of darts with the other. Stephanie Riches, who has the nunchuck equivalent to Excalibur drawn from the very same stone. Thomas Lautenbach, who owns an uncharted archipelago in the Pacific Ocean that emits a strange humming noise that halts human aging. Tiago Nascimento, who was banned from all main circuit surfing competitions because of his close personal friendship with Poseidon. Tish Just Lee, who can cure rabies by doing the sexy Hollywood smolder look at the afflicted party. Varunda, who after chanting an ancient Aztec hymn can open any jar no matter how devastatingly tight it's closed. And Whitrow, who somehow talked the race of lizard people they found in a cave on their land into paying them rent, and honestly the rent is pretty competitive with the modern market. And of course my god overanalyzers, Two Boots Are Beat, Andrew Watchett, Austin Gallup, Daniel Anderson, Dizzy Payne, Dominic Saint, Distant, Aaron Grace, It's Carton, Jackson, John Ajaka, Justin Fletchall, Mr. Freese, Nicholas Abbott, Peter Bayron, Phil, Pogger White, Reese, Rocket Mist, Ryan Maxwell, Samuel Vanderplatt, Super Snipper, Turt Bobs, and some sort of Bareface is still kicking around. Next up, we'll finish off the rift.